Welcome to the Beating Heartland, created by Denver Baughman.
Episode 37. The Town. The moment I stepped past the Welcome to Shannon sign, the world went quiet. The bird song in the nearby tree faded away, and I was alone with only the creaking wood and whistling wind as the trees swayed. A dog barked in the distance, terrified and confused, then abruptly quieted. It was still late January, nearing the turn of the month. Not much time had passed since this had all began, since the interrogation room, since finding the words. Unlike the vision of the glade I had just been in, the grass was still dead, the trees void of leaves. Patches of snow from a recent flurry still clung to the earth. It had been a mild winter so far. Not enough snow, the worst type of snow. A brown slush. Not even enough for snowball fights or snowmen. A small Midwestern town in the depths of winter brings with it a particular calmness and isolation. Only a brave few are ever out and about, suffering the elements, or children who don't heed their nerves enough to care about the biting cold. But right now, Denver couldn't see anyone. No children attempting to make the most of the muddy snow, no adults hustling into their cars to escape the confines of the small town, if only for an outing. No monsters lurking on the edges. It was just him, and the buildings, and the trees. Denver walked through town, trying to find any source of life, trying to find the family, signs of their project. Denver, I saw the small forest on the edge of town, where the creek hid in the middle, where I'd had my first date with Sally, and had been saved from drowning by Octor. The abandoned house had also lurked past those trees. It had been Sally's fake home for a time, and home to other things while I was growing up. Things looking for a place to hide away. My mom had even lived in it for a time, a place for her to escape, to try and drown out the memories, the sadness. But it was gone now. Swallowed by the earth. I could still feel Octor's tunnels running underground, connected to everything his words had touched. Somewhere deep underneath, the remains of the house mingled with everything else, twisted, misshapen. The wintry remains of one of the cornfields sat beside the woods, rows now messy and unmanaged, and I remembered the buried bodies that had been dug up there. The werewolf that had chased us, Jasmine and Sam, the town and state police who had come and done nothing. And now, I knew that Ariadne had been her the whole time. The years of the bullying and near torture, and she had been one of... The family, for one reason or another, always found their way back to Shannon. Something about the town drew them in. I guess even monsters need a place to call home, and Shannon was that for them. An area for the greater purpose to seed and grow, alienated from the prying eyes of the world. I approached the building that had been my home. It was empty now, the current occupants nowhere to be seen, so I walked in. The door hung open like someone had just left. The hinges creaking with the breeze. The decorations were tacky, not at all how it should be done, or not how it had been done when I was a kid, which is the only right way it should be. Everything felt smaller than I remembered, but the layout was still the same. I walked to the closet, opened it, and shoved aside the cleaning supplies in boxes full of junk. Underneath, there was no trapdoor. No ladder leading down into the dusty, unfinished basement that did and did not exist. I closed my eyes and felt for the words. Something shifted, and when I opened them, The trap door was there just as it had been. I did not open the door. I didn't need to. I knew Dad wasn't down there anymore. I had just wanted to see it. I left the house, strands of memories trailing me as I walked into the yard, reminding me of the good times, the bad, and the countless tedious, neutral moments that make life unique. The stump of the willow tree beckoned. I rested beside it and looked up. I could almost imagine the leaves cascading down, the feeling of safety under the shade, and the finding of the book, the letter. The carving of my parents' initials was still in the trunk, claw marks cut into them, making it hard to discern the letters and the heart, but they were still there. A reminder of the past, the love, the impulsiveness that had created me. I'm just gonna lay here for a bit, if you don't mind. The old water tower across the street still loomed over the house. Bits of it had fallen away and rusted from decades of weather and neglect. I remembered one day, bored, climbing the tower. It had been dangerous, stupid, but that's why I did it. For some reason, probably for repairs and inspection, there was a rusty ladder that led to a small platform near the top of the tower. I remembered climbing to the platform, out of breath, looking down at my house, the neighbors, the trees, the school a block away, and the very edges of the town. Past the baseball field, past the single gas station, past the factory, past the church, and above it all, there was a darkness that lingered. Not one that could be seen, but one that had been festering before the town even existed, preying on the inhabitants, expanding. Okay. I'm ready to move on. I got up, walked away from the house, the stump, and past the school. I could still feel my presence lingering inside. The power of the words shifted the building, changing the structure, making it strange, deep. Monsters trapped inside, trapped by the words, made to endure the endless labyrinth of tunnels that connected all the buildings. Octor, like the father, had had his claws dug deep into this area for some time. They were both more alike than Octor was probably willing to admit. Even though I couldn't see anyone, there was a distinct feeling of being watched by invisible eyes. The back of my neck tingled, and I couldn't help but glance at windows and doorways as I passed by. It wasn't until I was in the middle of Main Street, Jamie's diner to one side, Carol's knickknacks to the other, that I saw someone. She stood motionless on the edge of town, near the gas station. Her form shimmered in the sun, a mirage that phased in and out if you moved. Her long black dress rippled in the breeze and twinkled as if 1,000 stars were woven together. She stared at me, her face obscured by distance and long, matted blonde hair, but I still recognized her. I would recognize her anywhere, always. I blinked, and my mother stood directly in front of me. Her black dress, now visibly containing the inky depths of the words, writhing and twisting in beautiful black iridescence. Her eyes bored into me, glassy pools where only a glimmer of recollection and personality remained. She was clinging onto the words, preserving herself like a ghost, anchored to Shannon, traversing the tendrils that slinked under the surface. But she was only a shell of her former self. Little of the mother that I had known now existed. She had died out long ago, like Dad. But she smiled. Wrinkles creased around her lips, stiff from disuse. She knew me. More than that, she loved me. It's good to see you. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry that it happened like this. You did your best. You tried.
My words faltered, and she didn't say anything. There were no right words to say, nothing that would help or convey what we both felt. She held out her hand and clutched a book in her trembling fingers. The stained and aging cover was familiar. All too familiar. The boy who would be healed. I scoffed. The book, crafted by the words themselves, seemed to travel, appearing anywhere, everywhere, a constant reminder, a hook, the original tendril the words had used to anchor themselves in my brain. Mom opened the book, and sitting inside, lodged between 2 pages, was a Polaroid. One that had been in the basement with all the other photos, but at the time, I had glossed over it. It depicted my mother, young, full of hope and happiness, and a man who was not my father. He was younger than I had ever seen, but I still recognized the face, the piercing eyes, the meticulously crafted facial hair. It was the pastor. They both stood in front of the church. His arm was around her shoulder, holding her a little too tight. Underneath the photo was the letter, the one that had been with the book under the tree. It was sealed again, fancy lettering on the front, addressed to my mother, Susan Baughman. I looked up at Mom, and in her eyes there was a look, an acknowledgement. She wanted me to know. It was time that I knew, that I understood what had happened. And she had wanted to tell me for some time, but could never work up the courage.
The pastor. The book. The letter. It was all his. You never read it. You never read the letter. But you found it. You found it, didn't you?
She nodded. Slow. Stiff.
Why not? Why didn't you read it?
She didn't reply, but looked down and frowned, her hair obscuring her face, but a single tear could be seen crawling down her cheek. It had been too painful. There had been history there between them, something unspoken, or, well, there was a love that the pastor had had for her, an obsession. Had she reciprocated? Or had she jilted him, chosen father instead, something the pastor wasn't able to take, wasn't able to accept?
No, you ignored him. Or ignored the advances while trying to look past it. You thought it was Christian charity, kindness. You didn't want to accept it, so you didn't know if you could stop yourself if you did.
Her breath caught, and her body stiffened. She hadn't read the letter. She had been afraid. Afraid of what she might learn if she did. Afraid that she would have to accept the truth. It was always easier to stay ignorant. Move on, pretend everything was okay. Her family had instilled that in her. It's how they reacted after Dad's death. Even as her world shattered around her, ignoring the pain was easier. The pastor had killed my dad. He had been at the hospital, and he read to me that book in the womb. Argued with Dr. Winster for some reason. And then he had killed Dad when he returned to town, before he had a chance to see Mom. Taken the book from him, drove the car out to the woods. It all made sense. But part of the puzzle piece was still broken, missing. Why? Why did he love her? Why did she matter to him? And why did he care if I lived or died? It didn't fit. The family, they don't love. Not really. I heard a voice in the distance and looked up. It was loud, echoing from the other edge of town toward the church. It was his voice. It was calm, rhythmic, a constant pressure that wouldn't release until he finished speaking. That's where they were. The townspeople. I knew, at least some of them, that they were at the church. I turned back to Mom, but she was already gone, whisked away along the tendrils of the words. It was just me and my mind again.
She knew. She had to tell me. Before she moved on, she had to make it right. Try to, at least. You didn't know. You were in her, and you didn't know. You didn't tell me. We can't work like this.
It's always you. Don't forget that. We only help. Your desires, your obsessions, that's what drives us. The words are yours. You gotta find it for yourself.
No, you could do more. You could tell me more.
That's not how this works. You're talking to yourself.
You're not.
Accept it.
Back to the story.
Okay. Denver looked into the distance. Where his mom had come from, it was now just an empty street next to a gas station. She was gone, but her scent lingered for a moment longer.
I love you.
Denver doubted he would ever see her again. I followed the echoing voice toward the edge of town. I knew his cadence, his rhythm. The pastor was giving a sermon. And as I drew closer, I could almost feel the air becoming enveloped by his voice. The silence, the cold quiet that had befallen the town, it was his doing. Everything was listening, with bated breath. I passed a row of buildings, and the small church came into view, the graveyard off to one side. And the entire residence of Shannon was in front of the building. They were packed in, all roughly 800 of them smushed together, rows upon rows of people listening, silent, hanging on to every word. You could barely hear them breathing. He had always been persuasive, captivating, even to those who weren't religious. But this was something else.
I sense your fear, congregation. It is fear that brought you here, to me, to listen, to finally heed the words that I have been proclaiming since I arrived decades ago. There has been a fear that has gripped your lives as of late, that has refused to let go. A constant prickling on the back of your neck, that things are not right, that change is required. You wish to be free, but there is another way, a way to embrace it. Welcome it like a long-lost brother, to let it find home and rest in your heart. Fear is natural. It is essential. Is it not fear that drives our every decision, that ushers us along the tightrope of our lives, keeping us from plummeting off the side? It is fear of abandonment, of isolation, which urges us towards companionship, intimacy, love. It is fear of ourselves, our own shortcomings, failings, that presses us towards betterment, enlightenment. The fear of death compels us to seek nourishment, eat, exercise, protect ourselves, find shelter, and surround ourselves with people who can protect us from harm. It is the fear of what comes after death, the endless gray, heaven, purgatory, hell, Valhalla, Elysium, Asphodel, Sheol, that causes us to linger, refuse to pass on, remain echoes on this earth, echoes that surround us today, listening, patient. I feel your pain, your longing to hold on. It is something we all share in life and in death, so let us welcome it.
As he spoke, the ground underneath the congregation cracked, splinters of earth spreading under their feet, but no one seemed to notice. Their mouths hung open limply, their breathing slow, lured in by the hypnotic essence of his speech. A sermon that didn't falter or hesitate, or else the spell would be broken. He stood on a raised wooden platform erected outside the church. A simple wooden pulpit was positioned on top, but instead of the usual relief of a cross that would be carved into the front of the pulpit, there was a carving of a baby inside its mother's womb. Fetal position, umbilical cord reaching upwards, and holding the cord, a clawed hand, offering it, placing it. The platform was wide enough for a handful of people to join the pastor. A line of chairs rested along the back edge. Standing beside him was a woman. Her long black hair cascaded down her back, her round, youthful face contrasting the chiseled yet curated grisly nature of the pastor. Her hands rested on her protruding stomach, and Denver recognized her. Well, sort of. His boss. The woman he had become after the last ceremony had revived her. And she was pregnant. She mindlessly rubbed the bump and gazed at Pastor, her dark, hooded eyes trained on him with false love and admiration. She wasn't the only family member there. Summers stood off to the side, and beside him, Ariadne was tied and gagged. She had been crying, her hair disheveled and her face bruised. Summers and Ariadne both noticed my approach and stared. Summers smiled, and Ariadne tensed, both wanting to rush towards me and run away. A state trooper stood on the ground beside the platform. He wore large sunglasses. His posture was straight and rigid. He eyed the congregation and smirked, hand always resting on his gun. On the opposite side of the platform from Summers, 3 other family members stood. One Denver recognized instantly as his old principal, rotund, a cloud of smoke obscuring his features from his cigar. The second was trim and wore a perfectly tailored black suit. He had sleek, combed, gelled hair. His mustache was small and neatly trimmed. I could tell that he worked in some government office. The third wore a tattered lab coat. His face was heavily scarred, fresh cuts still caked with dry blood. He wore a manic smile that stretched at the scars around his mouth. His eyes darted around the crowd and toward the forest, where Denver could feel creatures lurking, waiting to be called upon, linked to this ragged man. 8 family members, counting Ariadne. 9, counting me. There were still 4 unaccounted for, 2 of which Denver had already killed. The shapeshifter at Polly could be any of the people in the crowd, but Denver didn't feel her. Though at the moment there were so many strands from so many people that he had trouble focusing. It was taking a lot of effort not to be overwhelmed by that many voices. Maybe that was part of the plan. Distract us, make us easier to overpower. But did they have enough energy for the ceremony? It had taken practically all of them to neutralize Octor last time, but now there were only 7 of them that would help. Did they have the power? The pastor continued to preach, but now he too stared at Denver, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth.
Fear, love, enlightenment, and worship, the leading pillars of any religion or philosophy. Akhenaten, Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha, Smith, Blavatsky, Crowley, Gardner, Hubbard. They all share these in common, even if it's masked, occluded. None of us is unique. We all experience the same longings, the same emotions.
Alright, let's move on. It's time. Charade's over.
The pastor frowned and snapped his head towards Summers. The crowd stirred. Bodies wavered, the spell cracking. Ghostly wisps had been curling out of the cracks in the ground, pooling at the crowd's feet, translucent hands clutching at the legs of many of the people standing there. Denver remembered his night in the graveyard. Aurora's ghost, the waiting hands. A murmur of confusion and nervousness rose through the crowd.
They need to be open and willing.
Oh, do they? Alright, then do it. Stop pussyfooting around and enjoying the nonsense coming out of your mouth. Get it done. Force it if you have to.
We are not all...
No one else is coming. Trust me. Will it be enough? After this?
It should, in theory.
Then do it. And pray to whatever you want that it works.
Very well.
The pastor turned back to the crowd and raised his hands to the sky. The rumbling grew louder, and the cracks widened. The murmuring ceased, and the residents of the town all went slack-jawed, their focus solely on the pastor again.
I call all of you to feed, to rejoice. The hour is near. A feast is prepared.
He looked directly at me.
Your time in the sun has returned. Your binds are snapped.
The family all raised their hands and began to chant as one. Their voices mixed and multiplied, and it seemed to reverberate in the ground. The air changed and swelled with their words, the ground opening like a yawning mouth around the crowd in a ring, cutting them off from escape. The cracks inside the ring widened, earth pouring into the darkness. I jumped back, the ground spilling into a giant hole in front of me, and hundreds of moaning spectral figures erupted out of the hole. They swirled around the dazed crowd, their translucent bodies sparkling in the sun. They chittered, moaned, and screamed, a feeding frenzy. The people did not react. They just stood, dumb and relaxed. The ghosts grabbed, clawed, and fought around the crowd, looking for bodies, hosts, fighting each other for which one to grab. And then, once decided, they entered through the slack mouths, pulling at the jaws, widening them past breaking point with sickening snaps, their long fingers delicately prying the mouths wide enough to slink into the bodies, forcing themselves into the congregation, possessing, taking control. This lasted only a few seconds, but it didn't end there. Once all the ghosts that could had found a host, others flying off in different directions in search of other bodies to possess, the townsfolk began to scream. It started with one. A young girl let out a blood-curdling scream, her voice mixing with the spirit inside of her, and she fell. Then 100 other voices followed. Their bodies all fell to the ground, writhing in pain and agony, some falling into the gaping cracks, consumed by the earth and darkness, never to be seen again. But you could still hear their screams, mingling with the rumbling and the chanting of the family. I couldn't move. Something was holding me still, forcing me to watch. I glanced to my side, and Somnum grinned, holding me by the shoulders. This was all for me. The ceremony had begun. Not everyone in the crowd fell screaming. Some still stood, and slowly turned to look at me. They weren't normal. Some of them, the proportions were slightly off, and some had too pale skin, and some had sharper teeth. One of them was Mrs. Nevins. She smiled and cackled, her arms bending in strange ways. She said something to me that was lost in the noise. The group began to walk and clamber towards me, their progress slow as they tried to navigate the cracked and sunken ground. I looked with horror at the entire town gripped in fear and pain. The family laughed and breathed in jubilation, their heads raised high, breathing in the power of the fear strengthening them, fueling them for the ceremony that they were about to perform. Somnum let me go, and I could move. I stumbled, legs shaking, head pounding, but I caught myself. It was too much. Like the hotel, the countless voices pierced my brain and made it hard to focus. My body trembled, and I tried to block it out, focus on something other than the voices, try to let them fade away so I could still function. I looked at Ariadne, and tears poured down her face. She winced and kept trying to look away, to run, but Summers kept pulling the ropes that bound her, forcing her to remain still, watch as the entire town of Shannon in one fell swoop was taken control of. The pastor opened his eyes. He looked dazed, content after a long meal. He looked at me and smiled. He didn't speak aloud, but I heard his voice in my head.
It is time.
With that, I collapsed and rolled, ragdolling towards one of the holes. I heard a family member, the one with the scars, curse and call out to the strange people amongst the crowd to grab me. But limply, I fell in, and the noises, the screams, became distant. My body smacked against hard earth, and I felt a rib and elbow snap. I gasped as my body crumpled, my vision swimming in darkness, the only light a small opening above me. I'd fallen far. The impact and the distance made it easier to think, and I felt all of the pain. Tendrils crawled on my arm and chest, tending to the broken bones. After a moment, with difficulty, I stood. I coughed up blood and black, but the words were already making progress in mending the breaks and bruises. I heard forms skittering above me, creatures trying to find a way down to where I'd fallen. I didn't have much time. I looked around and saw that I was in the tunnels of the words. I focused on a strand that felt like school. I knew there were books there. More words that could hopefully heal me, give me power, give me something that I could use against them. They had been planning this for some time. The pastor persuading the townsfolk for years, making them more pliable, emptying their minds, making them believe everything he said until they had no resistance left. I walked in the direction I felt would lead to school. I was slow. My left leg was sprained, but I knew which way to go. All of those people. They were gone. Controlled by the ghosts that remained. The entire town. I didn't have a plan. The family was now gorged on fear, the power enough to rip the words from me if they could find me. That was my only hope. Hide. Pick them off one at a time, and if I could, weaken them enough so that... I writhed in pain and screamed. Fire burst to life in the tunnel around me. Flames engulfed everything. It licked at my body. I felt like my insides were boiling. I screamed. I couldn't think. I couldn't breathe. Like blinded. I swear, my words were being burned. I could stop it. I felt it all. It was burning. I was burning.
The Beating Heartland was written by Denver Baughman. If you enjoyed the show, please rate and review us on whatever streaming platform you are using. Follow us online at The Beating Heartland. Thank you for listening.